Hello, and welcome to your next lesson. Today, we will review the data validation tool in Excel. Excel allows you to set criteria to your cells to accept only a certain type of data. Today, we will establish data validation based on whole numbers and date ranges. We will also set up alerts to notify the user if invalid information is entered into a cell. And we will also identify invalid data that was previously entered before the data criteria was established. This is a great Excel feature that I'm sure you will find beneficial, and I am looking forward to sharing this information with you. Let's go ahead and take a look at our lesson. So let's begin by locating our tools. Let's go to the Data tab. Let's go to the Data Tools group. Let's go ahead and get the drop-down, and then go ahead and review the tools that we will be working with today. We will work with the Data Validation tool. We will use the Circle Invalid Data tool to identify invalid data, and then we will also learn how we can clear those circles. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I'm going to begin by selecting cell B3, and I'm going to go ahead and drag it all the way down to cell B10. Next, I'm going to go to the Data tab. I'm going to go to the Data Tools group, and I'm going to go ahead and get my drop down. Let's go ahead and select Data Validation. Let's go to Settings, and here we're going to be working with whole numbers. And what I would like to do in this case is to go ahead and set a validation criteria to only accept data between 1 and 100. So let's go ahead and set that information now. Let's say whole numbers. We'll leave the data set as between. Let's set a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 100. Let's go to our error alert tab. Let's just go ahead and set a message. Let's say invalid data. We'll say please enter a number of 1 to 100. Okay, now let's go ahead and say okay. Now let's go ahead and enter some numbers. Let's say 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70. Okay, so far it has no issues with the data that I just entered. Let's go ahead back up to our data validation tool. Let's get our drop down. Let's go ahead and say circle invalid data. So as you can see, although I had the information already entered, it does identify this information as invalid. Now let's go ahead to cell B8. Let's go ahead and change this to an invalid number, and let's see if we can trigger the alert. I'm going to change this to 400. As you can see, it displays the message that we typed. So let's go ahead and cancel this. And now let's go back up to the Data tab. Let's say Data Tools. Let's get our drop down again. And let's go ahead and say Clear Validation Circles. So we can go ahead and get rid of those circles. Now let's go ahead and put valid information in those cells. I'm going to say 80 for cell B9. And I'm going to say 90 for cell B10. Okay, so we'll do another exercise, but this time we will do it in the form of dates. So let's go ahead up to cell C3. Let's drag it all the way down to C10. Now let's go ahead up to our data validation tool. Let's say data. Let's say data tools. Let's go ahead and get our drop down. Okay, so we'll select data validation. Let's go to settings. Let's go ahead and get the drop down and select date. Now let's set a date range. I'm going to say 01/01/20 as my starting date. My end date will be June 1st, 2020. I'm going to go to error alert, and I'm just going to type invalid date. Next, I'm going to go ahead and say okay. So now I want to go ahead and enter some data. I'm going to say 01/01. I'll do February 1st as my next date, March 1st as my third date. I'll do April 1st as my fourth date. And as you can see, there's other information already entered. So let's go ahead if we can identify invalid data. So let's go up to our data validation tool and get the drop down. Let's go ahead and say circle invalid data. And as you can see, July 1st and August 1st is identified as invalid. Now I want to go ahead and see if I can trigger my alert. I'm going to put my mouse inside of cell C8 and I'm going to go ahead and change June to September. And as you can see, it does trigger the alert that reads invalid date. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this. And I'm going to go ahead and put valid information inside of cells C9 and C10. We'll just go ahead and make both of these dates June. And as you can see, when I do this, my circles disappear. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and wrap up this lesson. Be sure to join us for the second part of the data validation tool, where we will set up a drop-down list and establish character limits. And with that being said, I will see you in the next video. Congratulations on completing another video and on your commitment to learning this program. I hope that you are getting the most out of our level up lessons, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next video.